You found Ask Alice, the podcast that takes a deep dive into the societal currents shaping our lives. I'm your host, Alice, and together we'll explore the often unseen forces at play. We'll examine cutting-edge research, dissect the data, and most importantly, if you're seeking to understand what's shaping our society,
today we're unpacking a really significant piece of legislation. It was called the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, or OBBA for short.
Right, and we've got this detailed report that, really dissects the proposals, the ideas behind them, and all the controversy it kicked up.
Yeah, and our mission here is basically to pull out the key stuff for you. What was actually in this massive bill, and why did it become such a flashpoint?
Mm-hmm.
You probably heard the name One Big Beautiful Bill, famously linked to former President Trump.
And Speaker Mike Johnson even referenced Mr. Trump's vision when he talked about it. So that name wasn't just like a random choice.
No, it signaled something big,
yeah.
right?
Ambitious.
Maybe even transformative policy changes.
Exactly. That name itself, it really set a tone. Part of a strategy maybe to package some pretty far-reaching changes. Mm-hmm. And the way they tried to pass it was ambitious too, budget reconciliation.
Ah, reconciliation. So that lets certain budget-related bills get through the Senate with just a simple majority, bypassing the filibuster.
That's the one. Tells you right there they were aiming for a major overhaul, even in a really divided Washington.
Okay, so getting into the report. What were the biggest proposed changes? It seems like taxes were a huge piece. Extending the 2017 tax breaks was central, wasn't it?
Oh, definitely. And the CBO, that's the Congressional Budget Office, the nonpartisan scorekeeper, they figured that extension alone would cut federal revenue by something like $3.7 trillion over 10 years.
Wow. And there were other new cuts proposed, too?
Yeah, things like getting rid of federal income tax on tips and overtime pay.
But one that really stirred the pot, according to this report, was the SALT deduction cap, state and local taxes.
Right, SALT. The bill wanted to raise the cap from $10,000, which is where it is now, way up to $40,000.
Okay, but only for people earning under $500,000 a year.
Correct. But here's the thing. Analysis from groups like the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget, they estimated this change would still mostly benefit the wealthiest households, even with that income limit.
How does that work?
Well, higher earners are just much more likely to have state and local taxes exceeding even the higher cap. And that specific change, estimated to add nearly $400 billion to the deficit over a decade. It really speaks to that supply-side idea,
The idea that cutting taxes, especially for businesses and higher earners, boosts the economy for everyone eventually.
That's the theory, yeah.
Okay, so big tax changes tilted towards the top. But the report shows this was meant to be balanced, kind of by some pretty major spending adjustments. Cuts, really.
Yes, significant cuts. The estimates we're seeing in the report range from, $1.3 trillion up to maybe $1.7 trillion in total spending reductions, and hitting core safety nets like Medicaid and SNAP, the Food Assistance Program.
And how are they proposing to cut Medicaid? The report mentions new work requirements.
That's a big one. New work requirements for non-disabled adults. And the projections were stark, potentially millions losing coverage. Yet the analysis suggested around 5.2 million just from the work rules, maybe closer to 7.8 million when you factor in all the proposed Medicaid changes. Often it's not just about finding work, it's about navigating the system.
Administrative hurdles, complex reporting rules, that kind of thing.
Exactly. Things that make it hard for people, even if eligible, to keep their coverage.
And what about SNAP, food assistance? What did the report find there?
Citing CBO data looked at by the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities, the report basically called them potentially the largest cuts in the program's history. Almost $300 billion through 2034.
Wow. How?
Well, expanding those work requirements again, but to new groups, parents of school-age kids, older adults, and crucially, shifting more of the program's costs onto the states.
Shifting costs to states. Why does that lead to people losing benefits? I mean, the program still exists, right?
It does, but if states suddenly have to foot a bigger chunk of the bill, they often react by trying to reduce their costs. So they might tighten who's eligible, maybe cut benefit levels, or just do less outreach.
Ah, okay. So people fall through the cracks.
Precisely. The report estimated that cost-shifting piece alone could mean about 1.3 million people lose food assistance, including kids.
So beyond taxes and the safety net, there was also a big change proposed for energy policy.
A major pivot, yeah. The idea was to roll back a lot of the clean energy incentives, from laws like the Inflation Reduction Act, and at the same time actively promote fossil fuels.
Like how?
repealing the methane tax, making it easier to drill for oil and gas on federal lands, that sort of thing.
And critics saw some real downsides there. The report mentions impacts on consumers and health.
Definitely. Projections suggested energy costs could go up for consumers maybe hundreds of dollars more a year down the line. And cutting pollution reduction programs. That was projected to have significant public health consequences.
Okay, so we've got these huge proposed shifts, taxes, spending, energy. How did the official economic forecasts, like from the CBO, compare to what the White House was saying?
That was a really fierce debate, and the report captures it. The CBO projected the bill would increase the federal deficit significantly.
Increase? By how much?
Somewhere between $2.4 trillion and $3.2 trillion over 10 years. And that includes the extra interest payments on the bigger debt, what they call debt service costs.
Right, just the interest. And the White House view?
They strongly disagreed. They claimed the bill, maybe combined with other policies, would actually reduce deficits by trillions.
Trillions! How could the numbers be so different?
A lot of it came down to economic growth assumptions. The White House argued the bill's policies would spark much stronger growth than the CBO expected. But independent analyses, like some mentioned in the report, suggested maybe a small short-term boost, but the added debt would likely slow down growth in the long run.
And this fiscal impact wasn't just theoretical, right? The report mentions Moody's, the credit agency.
Yeah, Moody's actually cited efforts to pass this bill as one reason when they downgraded U.S. government debt. That's basically investors seeing increased risk. A pretty serious signal.
And the politics weren't simple either. The House vote was incredibly close, wasn't it?
Razor thin, 215 to 214 with one voting present. But the controversy wasn't just Democrats versus Republicans. The report points out criticism from people you might not expect.
Like Elon Musk.
Like Elon Musk, yeah.
Yeah.
He publicly called the bill a disgusting abomination.
And the report links that back partly to the energy stuff we talked about, rolling back clean energy support.
That seemed to be part of it, yes. It showed the tensions weren't just between the parties. There were disagreements even within potential supporting groups. Think fiscal conservatives worried about the debt versus, say, people pushing hard for that higher SALT cap.
Right. It exposed these fundamental clashes over who government policy is really for.
Exactly. And critics, as the report notes, definitely framed it as, well, as Robin Hood in reverse.
Tax cuts mostly for the wealthy, spending cuts hitting vulnerable people the hardest.
That framing really gets to the core ideological fight this bill represented about fairness, the role of government, individual responsibility versus social support.
So wrapping this up, what's the big takeaway? This deep dive into the OBBBA report shows this was a proposal for a really fundamental reshaping of American policy.
Yeah, you had the massive tax cuts, which analyses projected would heavily favor the wealthy, then paired with these deep cuts to programs like Medicaid and S&P, potentially pushing millions off through work rules or cost shifts.
Plus the big U-turn on energy, away from clean energy towards fossil fuels with potential costs for consumers and public health.
And this huge disagreement on the economics. CBO seeing trillions in new debt, the White House claiming trillions in savings, fiercely debated.
And the controversy went beyond just party lines. Remember the Musk criticism, the internal tensions. It really laid bare these deep disagreements about who government should help, how the economy should work, where we should go on energy and the environment. Lots of trade-offs.
Which leads to a pretty big question, I think, for you listening. In today's super polarized world, can huge, ambitious laws like this one actually solve big problems? Or does their sheer size and the division they create just become another part of the problem itself, something to think about?